1520 is a home of the hip hop culture. But throughout my experiences as a Black person and as a person generally, as an educator, what I haven't heard is how our culture has been defined outside of the music industry, right? Outside of the music industry, anthropology, as in terms of anthropology, who were the people? What did they do? How did they live? You never hear that story. So that's why, in terms of what I'm trying to do, I hope to write a book one day that talks specifically about that.
Right. Now, was your family Southern or Caribbean origin?
Southern.
Southern, right. Okay. So that's interesting. And from what state were they originally?
Okay, my grandfather that Stephen asked me about, Lloyd, was from Georgia, Warrington, Georgia. He was the son of a white Dutch store owner and a slave mother, Nettie Hart, who they lived in Warrington, Georgia. I guess they had 15 kids and only 4 survived.
Right.
They never said what happened to them, but 4 survived, you know. And those 4 moved to the north, 1 in Chicago and Evanston, and 3 in New York City. And so my grandfather was one of those children.
Now, did he move to Harlem first?
No, he went straight to the Bronx when he left Atlanta out of college at Morehouse.
Wow. So what year was that?
He left Morehouse in, I want to say, just before my mother was born. So he must have left Morehouse in the late 20s and maybe 1930.
So he moved to the Bronx in the 30s?
Yes.
Do you know what neighborhood he moved to?
Yeah, to Linwood neighborhood.
Now, what streets are those?
Linwood would be just north of Gun Hill, White Plains.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, not as far as Co-op City.
Right. Okay. Because the concentrations of the Black population, the 30s, the biggest was Morrisania, but there was one up by Gun Hill and White Plains Road.
Right. Right.
And those were more small homeowners. The housing stock was more tenements in Morrisania, but more 1, 2, 3 family houses up in the North Bronx.
Yeah, he worked for the transit authority. My grandmother, she worked in the post office.
Oh, right.
So they kind of came up through that way.
Right. And were you born in the Bronx?
Absolutely. 1064 Caldwell Avenue, apartment 2B.
Caldwell Avenue. What was the cross street?
Third. That would be about 3rd. It's right around the corner from the old Lincoln Hospital.
Okay. Wow. So you were born in Mott Haven. Was this in private housing or public housing?
This was in an apartment building. I don't think it wasn't a project, but it's a red stone 5-story apartment.
Right. One of the 5-story walk-ups with the fire escapes.
Ubiquitous. Yeah.
Wow. And what elementary school did you go to?
Actually, when we came back from California, we went out there after my father's death. We came back in '68. We lived with my grandparents, Lloyd and Wesley Heath, at 3555 Olinville Avenue. So we went right down the street to PS 41.
And how old were you when you started at PS 41?
I want to say 10.
Okay. And was that a multiracial school at that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely it was. Actually, that whole area, I always joke because there were more Italian families in my grandmother's building than there were any other families. It was 90% white. The funny part about that, I think about racism not being a part of it, until later in life, but not so much. When they moved to 3555 Olinville, they were the first person to move in the building, generally. They got the top floor, 17E, beautiful apartment.
Was this one of the Mitchell Lama buildings?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where that is, with terraces.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes. Looked out to the Ave, and you got the river.
I know it well. I passed by.
So they moved to the top floor, and the first person to get in the building, then they got robbed, right? So the people came from the roof and dropped down to the terrace and broke in the house. And so I never dawned on me that that was important until I thought about there was only 5 black families in that building.
Mhm.
Guess what floor they all lived on?
The top.
17.
Oh.
They're all 5 of them.
That's amazing. So all the black families were in one floor at the very top.
Yes, on the top floor where the robbery happened initially.
Wow.
And so when I think about that, I was like, wait a minute, that didn't happen by accident. It's only 5 black families in this whole building. So although I didn't feel it living there, and I loved living there, I had a lot of friends, that just kind of hit me like, oh, wait a minute, that's part of that whole thing. You know?
Yeah.
So you didn't feel tension growing up, going to school, out on the street, because there was some pretty severe incidents, like 63 at the White Castle on Allerton Avenue and Boston Road. There was some vicious attacks on civil rights protesters by Italian American kids.
No, the biggest thing that happened to us was later on in life. I think it was the early 70s with the whole thing out in Tawana Brawley with
Right.
Al Sharpton. And that was the biggest thing that really got to me about what was happening, you know.
Okay, so you in 68, you moved to Mitchell-Lama with your grandparents in Olinville Avenue and go to school there. When did your family relocate to 1520 Sedgwick?
Okay, we stayed there for about 2 years, and then we were approved. My mother was a widow of a Navy veteran, so her and her 2 kids, me and my brother, were approved to move into 1520 Sedgwick in June 10th, 1970.
June 10th, 1970. Wow. And what? And were you ready to go to junior high by then?
Yes, right. That was the first year in 7th grade in that fall. Would have been the first year in 7th grade.
And what junior high did you go to?
Junior high school 82, which is East Tremont University.
Okay. Oh, up the hill. Okay.
Yeah, right up the hill. Yeah.
Right. And was that a multiracial school? It was a predominantly Black and Latinx, or was it still
predominantly Black and Latinx, but it was multiracial in terms of there were plenty of white kids in there as well.
Okay.
But that's part of my story too. That whole intersectional identity thing that was happening in the Bronx at that time ended shortly after we moved there.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But you got to into that.
Yeah, I mean, just to give an example, the Fordham Bedford neighborhood that's right next to the Fordham University in the West was 90% white in 1970 and was 80% Black and Latinx by 1980. So so that conforms. Now, just to get a background, what sort of music were you listening to growing up before you got to 1520 Sedgwick? What kind of music was on in your house?
It's interesting because they listened to the top, pop music was, everybody listened to pop music radio. But the thing is, we had just came back from California. We lived out there from 61 to 68.
Right.
We lived in Southern California. So we were on the beach, okay? We're talking about Strawberry Alarm Clock, The Doors,
so you into that, all that, okay. Jefferson Airplane. And
yeah. So
so you bring a little, you're bringing California into the Bronx.
Right. We brought the California to the Bronx. And then, of course, my grandparents, they were world travelers. They had saved their pennies and went around the world like 10 different times. They used to cruise all the time.
Right, okay.
From everything from Hawaiian music to Polynesian to...
Okay, so you were very eclectic in what your music you were exposed to.
And then I had my mother with Billie Holiday and all this other stuff.
Right, okay. Now you get to 1520 Sedgwick, another Mitchell-Lama building. Did you notice that there was a sizable group of West Indian families in the building, as well as African American and Latinx?
I wouldn't say sizable, but there was a handful. Like our first building superintendent, Mr. Reynolds, he was from Jamaica. I know Kool Herc's family was West Indian.
Yeah.
There was a couple, but it wasn't a sizable amount.
So, what was the relative percentage of African American and Latinx families? Was it more African American or about even?
It was more African American. I would say 60-40.
Okay, 60-40. Okay. So here you are, new neighborhood, going to junior high. What was the atmosphere in the building among the families, among the kids? Was it a friendly place?
Absolutely. It started out, this is what I was going to get to too, was that when we first moved there, it wasn't a lot of people around, right? The neighborhood itself was kind of desolate in that they found this spot, they put a building.
Right.
They didn't even figure out how to get us up to university. I had to put my mom by her butt over the hill so we can make it to Undercliff. Okay, they wasn't even steps. We had to petition the city to put the 18 bus down there to get us out of there. So,
right. So this was just a building thrown in vacant land without too much planning.
Right. They didn't even think about how to get us out of there. They had to build the steps afterwards. They had to get a bus afterwards and all of that. So, but to answer your question, the culture changed. First, it started out really quiet and not a lot of kids, maybe like 8 of us here. We played with some Puerto Rican kids from Undercliff. Maybe there's 20 kids in the whole block. And then with the fire at Concourse Plaza Hotel, then we got full overnight. That's where Kool Herc and them came from.
Oh, they were in the Concourse Plaza.
Yes, them. Everybody was in the Concourse Plaza except me, Kevin, and Bernard, because we were the first kids there. And then all of these kids overnight filled up our building. 17 floors, 10 apartments on each floor. Filled up our building overnight.
Wow. So where did you all play?
We played in the vacant lot, which is now 1600 Sedgwick.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
That used to be right next door here. And then there was a small space between us and the Bronx Expressway that they stuck another building in now. That's right.
Okay, so what sports did you play?
Stickball was the main situation, or we'd walk across the bridge, 181st Street Bridge, and go to the swimming pool, High Bridge.
Right, okay.
That's what we did every day, was walk across that bridge to High Bridge, 10 cents to get in. You can stay all day and swim and have a great time. So it was that or stickball only.
Okay. Now, in terms of the music, okay, so, you had your family tradition. What kind of music did these other families bring with them, into the building?
There was a lot of dance music starting to happen, a lot of funky kind of black music starting to happen. Okay. But it was interspersed, I would say, with rock music was actually quite huge.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was a hippie. Thank God for that, because he
knew
everything about rock music. Okay, this guy right here, 5th row center, Led Zeppelin.
Woo! Okay, so he was listening to Led Zeppelin and The
Who,
Santana, The Who,
everybody, and we went to every concert. Our first concert was at Van Cortlandt Park, Edgar Winter, and 10 Years After.
Okay.
Alvin Lee and 10 Years After with Edgar Winter.
Yeah.
That was our
first. I remember, that was also, part of my my life in those days.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there much Latin music in the building?
That happened a little bit later. Came on, I would say, late 70s, mid to late 70s. Came on pretty hard. Johnny Pacheco, Eddie Rodriguez, things of that kind of nature.
Okay, so, but there was a lot of strong funk in the hallways?
Yes, a lot of strong funk.
Okay.
A lot of Michael Jackson, Jimmy Castor. A lot of that kind of funky dance music kind of thing.
Okay. Now, I got called on for this whole breakdance show, which I sent you.
I saw
But
that.
now, before the hip hop parties, were kids dancing in the street, you know, and showing off their moves?
Okay, where it happened at was in our recreation room in 1520. That's where it started. Kool Herc used to throw these parties, and you pay a quarter, and it was on the weekends, and they used to have these dance competitions.
Okay.
And so guys used to go after it, and I remember the Nigger Twins, Trixie, that's cold dancers, you know.
So you had people coming in from other neighborhoods to show their skills and compete.
Right, but then it got and actually Herc got some 8mm films back in those days too from the rec room. But then it's got a little bit too crowded because people are starting to come now.
Yeah.
And they built 1600, so now we have more people trying to come. The neighborhood's coming down. So then one night he decided, I'm taking this outside.
Right, yeah, the famous
the famous
park.
In between 1520 and 1600. That's where I met my wife, actually.
So he started, before he went to the park, he took it outside between the two buildings?
Yes, that was the first. That's where everything blew up, where it just got, everybody knew about it. It was so crazy. There was about 5,000 kids out there to about 4 o'clock in the morning. Music was blasting nonstop, and the cops never stopped once.
Now, do you remember what year this was? This is like 74?
No, this is like 73, 70.
It's still 73.
73.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started, the first party was 73, but when you remember this outdoor jam was also 73.
Yeah, I think that was the first, that's what set everything off, because then it was just too big to do it.
Did you remember, you know, a lot of people talk about the gang truce from 1971 that made it possible for kids in the Bronx to come from different neighborhoods safely. Did you see anybody coming in gang colors or to the outdoor jams, or was it pretty, you know, people just as individuals or groups?
Yeah, gangs existed. I got recruited a couple times. There was a couple gangs out there, but they didn't have the eyes and the ears of everybody. They were kind of like these guys, these tough guys over here that kind of do this thing. Excuse me. For the most part, most people were cool. They were nice, and the whole idea was, how cool are you? How cool are you? We can only tell by the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you act. My wife talks about that. Her and her sister were talking about the difference between those guys around 1520 and everywhere else was because they had their own swag. They were just cool.
And the 1520 guys had swag?
Yes, the South Bronx generally.
Yeah.
South Bronx.
Now, what kind of, did you wear bell bottoms in those days, or?
I had a few bell bottoms, but the move was once you got to be of stature, which I was, because I used to sell drugs and make a lot of money, and so I had the revenue to go out and buy tailor-made pants and $400 Leighton sweaters and Jesus pieces that cost $2,000 back in 1970.
Now, did you also have a hat?
I didn't do the hat.
You didn't do the hat. You didn't do the hat.
I used to haircut 3 times a week, so I had the wavy hair. So I didn't do the hat. I did the wave.
So how old were you when you got into the selling?
13.
Did somebody recruit you, or?
Yeah, there was this cat who was an older cat. He had a what do you call it? A moving company. He bought a truck. He had a moving company. I won't mention his name, but you know who you are. And he recruited me and my buddy. He gave us a shopping bag full of nickel bags and said, "You guys sell this, and you could keep $2 a bag."
This is mostly weed, right?
This was mostly weed to begin with. Yes.
Yeah, because when I started teaching at Fordham in 1970, my students were always handing me nickel bags.
That's exactly. Might have been one of mine.
One of your bags. So it started off there and then escalated into,
The escalation came when 1600 was built. And that would have been a couple of years later, because then we got an influx of all of these cats from Harlem, big time dope dealers and pimps and all kinds of shit from Harlem came into our neighborhood. So now we got access to everything. Actually, the access started before that, because university projects on University 174th Street.
Yeah.
My brother's friends, half of them were white. They used to live there. They were really cool. I mean, there's nothing you couldn't get. Opium, mescaline, cocaine, pills, LSD, anything you wanted in 1970, 71, 72.
Right. Yeah.
Anything. So the escalation started with cocaine, I would say in the mid-70s, 73, 74. In 1600, they had some big time cocaine dope.
In those days, the cocaine was a drug for with people with money.
Yes, absolutely.
This was we're talking about powder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, during all this, did the police pretty much leave everybody alone if there was, because were there periodic like sweeps of people involved in the drug?
No, they pretty much left people alone, because there were departments in there with steel bolts across the door, because they're running in so much money and so many people. And so the cops never came in there. The one thing I had a problem with the cops is my white friend from Van Cortlandt Park came down. He was selling me an ounce of mescaline, and we were sitting on a car waiting for the bus so he could go back. And the cops came and took us down into the basement and said, "You're trying to break in this car." And they searched us. They didn't find the stuff. And this was the day after the new law where you get life for.
Oh, wow.
It was the day after, and they didn't find it. And they put him on the bus and they sent me home. And I just kept thinking, man, how lucky were you the day after? But yeah, no, the cops didn't do anything about the drug problem.
Did you, I worked on a book with someone from the Patterson houses who led a double life. He was a basketball player, everybody knew, and a very polite kind of person to all the adults. And then on the side, he sold drugs. It's actually called The Rat That Got Away, a Bronx memoir. Was you that way? Were you somebody who, still did well in school, still was, or did you get rebellious towards school and adults at the same time?
It's kind of funny. I didn't get rebellious towards adults, because we actually, in that area, kind of respected each other and respected people's family and respected adults. So I never really was. My brother was rebellious. She told him, "If you think you're so good and you don't want to listen, move out." And he left at 15. But he didn't fight or argue. We didn't do that. But to answer your question, I was accepted into Samuel Gompers High School, technical high school.
Right. I know exactly where it is.
Couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. So I was a truant in my 9th year. I did not go. So I was coming outside, getting ready to pick up this girl from the bus who was coming to visit me. And I ran into my buddy's mother, Miss Jones. And Miss Jones said, "Hey, what are you doing out here? Your mother works too hard for you to be being a truant and acting a fool." And Miss Jones was a big woman. So she said, "You know what? If I catch you out here between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., I'm going to stomp you. You're not doing the right thing." And I was scared of Miss Jones, right? So I always joke with her kids that after your mother threatened me, I never stopped going to college. I just never stopped. I got them.
Now, did you go back to Gompers? Did you find another school?
No. What I did, I made a deal with the guidance counselor that if you send me to my neighborhood high school, Taft, I might stay there and do better. But then what happens? My brother asked me to accompany him to take the GED one day, one Saturday in the 10th grade. I was supposed to be going in the 10th grade. And they said, you can't just sit here, you got to take the test. So I said, okay, I'll take the test. And then I remember there was a logarithm back during that time. It was called CAB, C-A-B. And if you don't know the answer, just follow that all the way down. Long story short, I passed the GED with flying colors and was out of high school that week.
What? So as a 10th grader, they let you get a GED?
Yeah,
Wow.
I never went to high school.
And how old were you at that time?
10th grade, I was probably about 15 15.
So okay, so what did you do then?
Start selling drugs and just hanging out and making money and having girlfriends and renting limousines and living the big life, living it up.
Now, did you have to carry a weapon when you were doing that?
Negative.
So you did this all without ever having carrying a gun?
Never. Wasn't scared of nobody and went everywhere.
You didn't have bodyguards or?
Didn't do none of that because I felt like, why would I do that? People, that wasn't even an issue because the folks, first and foremost, I owned my neighborhood, okay? Everybody knew me. If something was to happen to me, that shit was going to get turned out. That's first. Secondly, when I go to other neighborhoods, I'm there as a friend or a coworker with somebody who owns that neighborhood or that bar. You know, my best friend's brother had 3 spots on 123rd Street cheaper house. I go down there and sell my, what do you call it? The gold, the Acapulco gold. I used to sell Acapulco gold on 123rd Street, and the Jamaicans let me do it because they knew I was down with these cats over here. So I didn't fear nobody. I tell you, I was so stupid that way that one day I went on the subway and had this big ass Jesus piece on with a black shirt. And these dope fiends tried to kill me.
Mm.
They tried to kill me. They tried to knife me. And I was lucky that the door opened and there was 2 cops standing there and they ran away. But they were about to kill me. I was just oblivious to.
Yeah. Now, but you were never threatened in your neighborhood by.
No, hell no.
But that's really an interesting story there. Now, did you get involved in organizing like music events or?
No, that wasn't my thing. Like the closest I got to the music is like I was telling Steven was Kool Herc would call me down to his house and say, man, I just bought these records. Come listen to them with me. Let me know what you think. You think they're going to be good for the party next Saturday? And we sit up in his room and smoke weed and listen to these new records. And I'll say, hell yeah. Like I remember instinctively one Saturday afternoon, listening to Babe Ruth, the Mexican. Right. That was huge on the dance scene. But it kind of started in his bedroom like, hey, do you think this is going to be a good thing? And I'm like, yeah, this is great. So in terms of the music, I went to all the parties. You know, I show up looking dapper with a couple girlfriends and drinking champagne and throwing money around. But I'm like, this is the weird part, though, is because we're like teenagers. And nobody ever said, what are you doing in this bar? Or you're not old enough to buy liquor from a liquor store. Or where are you kids going in a limousine downtown at 3 o'clock? And nobody ever asked those questions. So I even today say, how did that happen? You know, like nobody cared. Nobody cared.
Did you ever go to, Disco Fever on Jerome Avenue?
Yeah, with the Disco Fever. I was actually, when my brother Stan came from Bellingham with his new wife, Jennifer, white girl from Bellingham. We said, hey, we're going to take Jennifer to the Disco Fever.
To the Fever, right, okay.
She probably was the first white chick to get down in there like that. And she was me and Kim and Bernard and a whole bunch of folks. And my brother didn't go. And I remember Herc being there and a whole bunch of cats did. Coco, who used to work with Herc and stuff.
Coco LaRock, yeah.
Yeah. I went to school with all of these cats. And so we took Jennifer to the Disco Fever. And she had a ball. She had fun. We danced. Nobody said nothing out the way to her. She enjoyed herself. That was fun. So hell yeah, I've been to the funeral many times.
Right. Now, did you have any idea when you were in the middle of all this stuff with Herc that this was going to emerge and transform global music?
No. My wife did, because she like moved in the 1600 from Harlem, and she was telling all of her friends, this is something strange is going on down here.
Okay.
These cats are playing music and dancing and looking great, and it's just she used to bring her girlfriends down to go to the parties.
Right.
So they see something different.
Did you ever go to the other side of the Bronx to the Bombada parties in Bronx River?
No, that was whack with DJ Pete. What was his name? DJ
Pete DJ Jones?
Yeah, Pete DJ Jones.
I interviewed him.
We don't do that. That was whack. That was when my cousins lived up by Co-op City and all that. We didn't do that.
Okay, so did you ever see Pete DJ Jones spin?
Yes, I've seen him, but I didn't know what what it was about. It seemed a little bit corny. It wasn't like new and exciting because Herc was playing the break beats.
Yeah, no. DJ Jones would do one whole record into another. Right. Yeah, because I have all his mixtapes.
Nice. Yeah, but for us, it was all about Herc, you know.
But also, Pete
used to call us the Herculoids.
The Herculoids.
Rocksky, the Herculoids. Okay?
Yeah. Well, Pete DJ Jones had, links to the whole black college crowd because he was a star basketball player.
Yeah.
As well as, a DJ, and, he used to play down at West 4th Street, that whole scene.
Yeah, where we're coming from, it was nothing outside of our community, right? So we couldn't even really accept or appreciate anybody else. So I'll make that real clear. We didn't try to. We were just.
And so the bars you went to were the ones along Jerome Avenue. Did you ever go up to Gun Hill? To any of those places?
Jerome and Burnside. I can't remember the name of it that was up there. The bar that I used to hang out in all the time was the Dunn Bar on 155th Street and 8th Avenue over by the old Polo Ground.
Oh, yeah, up there. Okay, Sugar Hill.
I used to hang out at because, like I said, the lady I was dealing with in 1600, my Coke Connect, that was her bar.
Okay.
And we'd meet down there for drinks and re-up and everything else. So that's kind of where I barred at.
Right. Okay. So how did you, when you're in the middle of this pretty plush life, did you also have in the back of your head, I'm going to college?
I had in the back of my head, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail because everybody knew me. I was the only person in that area. If you went down that area, the 1520 area, and said, who got the weed? It's Fred. That's who had it.
Fred got the weed.
Fred got the weed. And everybody knew that. So I had a buddy who lived in 1600 who was selling for me. And then we got into coke more heavily. And he was selling for me. And then he started putting, like, you stand outside 1600 waiting for people to get off the bus at 5 o'clock. You hit the after work crew coming in, And he was hiding it in the post box in the lobby. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. I mean, like, this is tough enough without making yourself a federal mark.
Right.
Hiding it in a post. Are you kidding me? So I talked to him about that. So I said, you know what? I'm done with you, this, and everything because this is going to, wind me up in jail. So, and the next day, as it turns out, some detectives came by and were taking pictures of me in front of my building while they were driving by. And so what did I do? I went upstairs and got my camera. And when they came back, I took pictures of them. But then when I went to get my film developed, they said, oh, we destroyed it by accident. So I never got my pictures, but they got theirs. So I knew it was on for me then. Between what this guy was doing and just been going so many years without any problems, and now they're taking pictures of me, I knew.
Now, was this still in the late 70s, or?
This would have been the summer of 76.
Okay.
When I said,
so you're like, you're
I had
now 17, 18 years old?
at 76, that's about 17.
Yeah,
But I had a good 4 years under my belt though with no problems.
right. Wow. So at 17, you decide to get out of the game?
17, I decided to go to the only place that wanted me, and that was the military. So
Wow.
I started looking at the military as an option for getting out of New York.
Right. And this is not, not this, the Vietnam War is over, so it's not like you're going to be sent to the
Yeah, so
jungles.
that was cool. And based on my GED and the test that I took for them, they were like, you can go into anything you want to go into. And I'm like, oh, cool. But the funny thing is, for 2 summers, I worked at the brand new Riverview housing. They had the Roberto Clemente State
Yeah,
Park.
I know, right across the street. Yeah.
Yes. I was one of the first employees there when they built it new. I worked in the athletic assistant. I was an athletic assistant, cleaning up locker rooms and sweeping basketball floors and all this kind of shit. And so when I went into the military, they said, well, let's look and see what we can find for you. And so he goes in the computer and he goes, oh my God. I'm like, what? He goes, I haven't seen one of these jobs in years. I thought we were getting away from this. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like an athletic director. We're going into more of a civilian framework for athletics and MWR. And so we haven't seen this in years. I thought we were done with this. And I was like, well, tell me a little bit about this. He said, well, there's no tech school and it's on-the-job training. And after you leave, they don't wear uniforms. I was like, sign me up. Sign me up. So long story short, to this day, I'm an athletic and recreation professional. Actually, I'm associate director of engagement for the university, and that kind of incorporates a lot.
So that runs all the intramural programs and.
No, that would just be one part of the recreation area. This would be more with activities and outdoor recreation and the boating center.
Wow.
And all of these different entities. There's about 6 of them under me that does that kind of thing. But
so you got into athletic and recreation administration in the military.
Yeah, because that's what my background was, right? I had 2 summers working at Roberto Clemente State Park,
Right. Now, did they send you to school for this? Did they give you any on-the-job training or just?
On-the-job training. So after I got out of basic training, they sent me to Rantoul, Illinois. Downstate Illinois, about an hour south of Chicago, middle of nowhere, Rantoul Air Force Base. And so when I got there, they handed me a key ring with about 400 keys on it. They said, here, you're in charge. Like, how am I going to be in charge when I just got here? They said, well, we've been here for 5 years and you're taking over, so you're in charge. So, that's what you call giving people responsibility. Mm-hmm. I mean, as soon as I got there, I was in charge of all of the facilities on base, rec center, gymnasium, sports arena, baseball field, swimming pools, everything.
Wow. Now, this was an Air Force base.
Yes.
Now, were you in the Air Force or you were in the Army?
I was in the Air Force.
So you signed up for the Air Force?
Yes.
Now, in those days, you had to pass a test to get into the Air Force, or was it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, right. And since you tested well,
yes.
Okay, so how long did you spend in the Air Force?
I spent 4.5 years in the Air Force. And then I got out and moved to Atlanta.
Atlanta, okay. Did you have family in Atlanta, or you?
Yeah, I actually did. Mrs. Brown, who was my grandparents' neighbor in Olinville, she had moved back to Atlanta. So she accepted me and my family, and we lived with her for about a week until we found a place and got situated. So that was our family when we went back to Atlanta. We lived
now, were you married at that time when you went to Atlanta?
I got married the day before I left for basic training.
Oh, wow. And did you have children by that time?
My wife had a daughter that was 2, so yes.
Okay. Wow.
And so the deal was that she was going through some stuff, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to leave. So if you want to come with me, we might as well get married. That's an extra $400 a month. And she was like, okay. And so we got married and we left. And it's been a great story because my wife worked daily with me just as hard. We're still married to this day, 43 years.
Wow.
She got her doctorate in education. She was the assistant dean of students at Western, where I work. She just retired. So in terms of our educational road together, it's been great. We've always went to school. We've always educated ourselves.
Now, when you went down to Atlanta together, is that when you first started taking college courses?
Yes. Yes. I got 12 credits from the Community College of the Air Force.
Okay.
Just gave them to me because I made rank. So it's like, hey, that's 12 credits for the Community College of the Air Force.
Right.
So from that position on, I started taking classes, and up until 2 years ago, I've been taking classes ever since 1977.
Wow. And so what year did you move to Bellingham?
1988.
Okay, so you were in Atlanta until then.
Yes, we did Atlanta from 81 to 88. Yes.
Now, during that time you were in Atlanta, did you ever make trips back to the Bronx to meet?
Oh, heck yeah, all the time. We should drive up there. Takes about 12 to 15 hours. We should run 95 all the time going home, always.
Okay.
Now,
Now,
your grandparents were still up there, right? They're still up there.
Grandparents were still up there. My grandmother died in 79, but my grandfather was still there. My mom was still there.
and that is there at Olinville Avenue?
Yes,
And your mom is at 1520 Sedgwick?
correct. 17E, yep.
Now, what were people saying about the Bronx in those years, in the 80s? You know,
The Bronx didn't really have a good reputation at all, right? Because half of it, like Southern Boulevard and over there by Gompers, was burnt out and
right.
depressed. And then there was a lot of fighting and crime. And, so the Bronx never really got a good shake, for what it could have been. That's why it's important for me, if I can regress for a minute, to tell the story of 1520, because 1520 is a story of loss and morality. People don't see morality with this story, but it was a story of morality in that people looked out for each other, and families looked out for each other, and mothers, regardless of where they were in their station in life, looked out for their kids. And so there was a real familial community about 1520 and about Sedgwick and 174th Street. We were hidden behind University Hill, sandwiched in between the Major Deegan, and there was nothing down there. So we were our own community. And so, and that's why I have always tried to just push the part about, if we're talking about hip hop as a culture, it's the people who lived there and the way we interacted that made it possible.
That this community feeling allowed Herc to throw these parties and for people to come from all over and feel safe.
Yes.
Because it was the safe space.
Not one fight, no argument. And believe we're down there drinking old English 800, smoking weed, getting high, all of that. So the possibilities are endless for drama, endless. But the fact that this was the what they call the valley, going down in the valley. Yeah. We were in the valley, and people knew the valley is different.
But I also think this brings up how important the Mitchell-Lama, subsidized middle-income houses was to holding the Bronx together through the hard times.
Absolutely, because my mom was a school teacher. She used to teach at PS 54 on Fox Avenue.
Yeah,
And that area was crazy.
that was a rough area. Mauritania took its blows,
Yeah.
60s, 70s, and then in the crack epidemic.
Man, that was crazy neighborhood. I got robbed by a couple dope fiends going to visit her at her school over there, you know. And so she was a single parent, but she was able to live in 1520 in a nice apartment and work. And actually, there was a huge furniture store on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue back in the day. And she used to work there on the weekends, you know, to get extra money. Then she started going to school. And ultimately, she got her master's from Mount St. Vincent College.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, to see somebody work that hard and that diligently, I always say to myself, and I say to my kids today, when in doubt, think of Mommy Collins, what we call Mommy Collins. That's what my stepdaughter's name for her when she used to babysit. Think of Mommy Collins, you know, how hard you can work and actually make something out of this, regardless of where you come from. So that was how we were structured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is very important to put, you know, before people that, you know, it's like and I think this is, I have a friend, Michael Pardis, who grew up in the South Bronx and, you know, getting his doctorate and runs a big community organization. He said there's an adult generation behind hip hop. All the parents who made sure that everything was okay in the community center and supported all of you.
Yes.
Without those, you know, parents and community center directors, this never could have happened.
Never could have happened. And we had an older guy in our building. He was in the 70s. He was a dope fiend. He was a painter. He had 12 kids, and everybody knew him. And he used to talk to us. He used to come out and drink with us and smoke with us and sit down and talk about life, you know, and like what's okay and what's not okay. You guys are running. I remember my mother gave him some drama one time. She said, "I'm going to call the cops on you." And he's like, "Well, why?" She said, "Because you got my son down at your house drinking and smoking weed, and he's a teenager, and I think I'm going to call the police on you." And he said to her, "Miss Collins, let me tell you something. When Freddie comes down to my house, we're sitting in my living room with my family talking about life, and he's safe. Now, you can have him sit there and drink a beer with me, or you can have him go out there in the street and experiment with all of this shit that's going on out there. You choose what you want to do."
Fascinating. Uh-huh.
And she chose to leave him alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She chose to leave him alone. Because he was right. Because I was experimenting with LSD and mescaline and all kinds of shit that I had no idea about. But when I was with him, we were just sitting in his living room listening to music and drinking beer and talking. And it was a safe environment with his family. So there was people who cared about us. And that translates too, because we tend to do that too. In my role to this day, I tend to take young people under my wing and talk to them about life. How can you get more out of it than what you're getting? And maybe suppress some of the barriers and negativity that you're dealing with, you know. So I tend to be that guy now, I think.
Uh-huh.
And would you say that general approach towards life was a central part of kind of early hip hop culture?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because everybody looked out for each other. I remember one day we were outside and a little girl was running and some bully tripped her and started laughing. And my buddy went up to this guy and said, "I'm going to beat your ass, dude, because that little girl didn't do nothing to you." And he said, "You need to stop bullying all these kids around here." And he was going to go to war with this guy for tripping the little girl. And that's kind of where we were all at. You don't take advantage of people like that, man. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
And we're all down here stuck in this environment together. So we got to live collectively.
So there was a kind of ethics, even as people were, you know, moving in and out of the drug business.
Absolutely.
There were
Because
certain community standards that you had to uphold. Being
right.
polite to elders, not bullying people.
Right. But the drug business was just was income. It wasn't who we were. It's just income, something to keep money in my pocket. You know, my mom was. I got tired of her buying Wranglers at Alexander's on Fordham. You know, so I wanted my own tailor-made clothes with the fresh new 3-line Pro-Keds and the fancy sweaters. That's something that she couldn't afford to do.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. If I want to take a picture of us, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have 5,000 Facebook friends, so.
Nice.
Okay, smile, everybody. Cool. This is really good stuff. And you know, I'm not that surprised, but I think we need a lot more about the Mitchell Lama experience in the Bronx. You know, because it's a point of stability.
Absolutely.
You know, look, I mean, the Bronx, unlike many other places, has come back from all the tragedies. And so you have to look at why there's resilience in the people in the middle of all those things.
Yeah, but the toughest part, though, I'll say about that was that in the early 70s, all the white people left the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day we've got them in the building and their store owners and their friends and then, well, in my area of the Bronx, because in Oldeville, they didn't leave.
No, they didn't leave. And they're still there at Allerton Ave.
Yeah. But in 174th Street in Sedgwick and University.
And Taft High School made 100% transition.
Yeah, they all left. So
in the late 60s, it was predominantly white, and by the late 70s, it's almost all black and Latinx.
Yeah, but that has a impact on our psyche as black people growing up there too. It's like, you know, what is the problem? And not only did they leave, but services left with them.
Right.
Opportunity left with them. Right. So I look at hip hop as a way of us, you know, like fighting that pain of loss.
Right.
You know? So we went from having all this loss and pain to false senses of security and building our own selves up through our look and through our dance and through this and that. But that was ultimately because I think of loss.
Wow. Now, did you ever get, you know, into when hip hop emerged as music, you know, with the rapping and all that? Did you become a fan of it? Did you follow this music as you moved around the country?
Absolutely. I remember when what was it? What's the hell the name of that song? The hip.
Rapper's Block, 1979.
I was in the Air Force, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." One, because Big Bank Hank was in my high school. Last time I seen Big Bank Hank, he was delivering pizzas on University. He was a pizza delivery boy.
So he was at Taft.
Yeah. And the last time I seen him, he was delivering pizzas. So I was like, "Oh, that's Hank. Okay, cool." And so I knew him. And I liked the song, and it made a lot of sense, and it went crazy, you know, so I did enjoy that. But I will say that when I got depressed one time, I think I was in Atlanta, was when Barney Rubble was rapping for Fruity Pebbles on a commercial. And I was like, you know what? This is a problem. This is a problem right here, because it doesn't really jive with my interpretation of hip-hop. Like Rappers Delight did, Barney Rubble did not.
Yeah.
So I had with the commercialized version of, and still do to this day, have a problem with the commercialized version of hip hop, because hip hop has been defined by the music industry, okay, and what they put out to be important, okay. Because when I grew up, a cat that looked like Lil Wayne was a bum, okay. He wasn't nobody that you wanted to aspire to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't denigrate women and call them out their name, bitches and hoes, and we didn't do any of
Yeah,
those.
right. Now, here's what's interesting. You know, the hottest rapper in the world comes from your neighborhood, Cardi B,
Yeah,
up the hill in Highbridge. You know, it's still going on with different, different cultural traditions. Did your children become hip hop fans?
absolutely, absolutely. My son, to this day, still giving me CDs. Hey, listen to this. This is great. You know, my daughter is a little bit more conservative. She grew up really sheltered, a single child, and she lived in a bunch of different areas. So she's not as in tuned with the urban Black experience
Uh-huh.
as my son that I raised
Uh-huh.
under my wing. He's a little bit more hardcore that way in terms of the music. She listens to, popular music and different types of music,
Uh-huh.
but I wouldn't say she's a rap enthusiast, not my daughter. My
Right.
son,
Okay.
What about your grandparents? Did they ever attend any of the hip hop parties at 1520 Sedgwick?
negative. My grandparents, they were like in the 50s and 60s. They were older
Yeah.
folks, and the parties they went to actually took place in their recreation room, right? There was a bunch of folks that would get together. They would party for anything. Halloween, casino night, didn't matter. They'd get dressed up, they'd have food. And there was a lot of folks in there that were business owners. I remember one guy, he owned Williamsbridge Travel. The other guy owned Marticelli's funeral home, which was right across the street from the church on Gun Hill, Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
So there was some big time business folks in that building, and they used to and they put together these trips too.
Okay.
They used to go on 30 and
cruises and stuff.
yes, they've been everywhere, everywhere. And actually, I was standing in front of 1520 one day, and I got a postcard from my grandparents, and it was from Egypt, and they were on camels in front of Giza. And I was like, wow, now that's exciting. The next year I got one, they were at Black Rock in Maui in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, you know what? I looked at that postcard, I said, one day I'm going to find my way to this Hawaii. And wouldn't you know, for the past 8 years, up until the coronavirus, I go to Maui every summer. That's just
Really?
that's just kind of where I hang out. Conopali Beach, every summer, me and my boy or my family if they go. And, so you have to have that impetus too, right? A lot of the people I grew up with didn't have anything to look at. They didn't see any other options for what they were doing. But thankfully for my grandparents and my mother, we knew that there was a better way out there.
Mm-hmm.
And both your grandparents had very stable jobs kind of throughout, so that I'm sure let them do things that people with less stable employment might not be able to do. Didn't you say your grandma, was she postmaster general at one of the offices, one of the post offices?
She was the first Black woman postmaster in New York.
Who ran an entire facility.
Yeah, her facility was right across the street from Immaculate Conception, right next door to Marticelli's funeral home. It's funeral home now.
I just had to go there the other day, actually. So
That's where she worked. Absolutely, across the street from the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there used to be another train line that ran down this way. I want to say the 5 or so. That kind of ran west. That's not there anymore.
The 3rd Avenue L was what was knocked down.
Yeah. My grandfather used to work at that cross section right there at Gun Hill and White Plains. He was a switchman. He used to switch to tracks and whatnot. Right. So he was 2 blocks from his house on Olerville.
Yeah. Well, the New York City Black middle class is built around civil service.
Yes. Absolutely.
from, absolutely, from, and so, yeah, this is kind of a great story. And I was involved in getting 1520 Sedgwick turned into a national historic site in order to keep the predatory lenders from taking it over.
Yes.
I got involved about 7-8 years ago, and that Herc spoke at the ceremony along with Schumer and a whole bunch of people. And everybody goes by to visit now. It's like,
yes. And that needed to happen too, because it was a great thing that happened there. Absolutely, that happened there. But again, I will credit the community with building that environment that existed there.
okay, boy, I wish my friend Michael Pardis was here, because that's what he always, the unsung story of hip hop is the community that created the environment that allowed young people to create this way somewhat safely.
Yes, very much safely. Like I said, we didn't worry about fighting or getting into gangs but on the other part of this too, there wasn't always safety, okay? Because in the first couple of years of 1520, we had a tenant association president. His name was Eddie Evans. And Eddie Evans used to live in 18C on the top floor. And he was very active in keeping the tenant association active and keeping the building active and whatnot. And Eddie was killed in our building.
Wow.
Yeah, Eddie was shotgun blasted with a 30-30. I actually found his body.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The mess was 6 inches deep in the stairwell. Okay.
Did anybody figure out who did it?
They did figure out who did it. Eddie was a nice man. He used to have a neck brace. We used to call him Eddie Neck, because he used to wear this neck brace all the time. Tall, good-looking man, Caribbean man. Yeah, he was really nice. Eddie Evans. In fact, 1520 at one point was going to be named after Eddie.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that, but at one time they were calling it the Eddie Evans Building or something. Because 1520 was actually 1516, 1520 when we moved in. It was 1516-1520. And then somehow they dropped to 1516 and it was always looked at as 1520. And I don't know what happened to that, but there was some tragedies. There was another tragedy. I wish Bernard was still alive. He could tell me this little girl's name, but she was a little Puerto Rican girl on the 10th floor, 10F. They had the bunk beds up against the window. And I guess she was on the top reading to her sister, but her back was against the screen. And the screen fell out, and she fell out.
Oh, God. Oh.
And moved 10 stories down. I saw her. I looked out the window off my terrace, and I seen her laying there. I was like, I hope that's a doll. Turned out it wasn't a doll. And that young lady died. Beautiful little girl, Puerto Rican girl. So we've had our share of tragedies in there. But for the most part, they were few and far between. For the most part, it was just really calm and collective and nice. Surprisingly so, for a bunch of poor folks from all over New York, especially when they let out the Concourse Plaza. We had all kind of people from west, from the East Bronx, from Harlem, from everywhere in there. But they all came together to have a decent place to live. It was always nice when, they had some rat problem at one point, but it was always nice, to live in that building. Always comfortable. I'll tell you a quick Kool Herc story. One night, me and the Puerto Ricans were breaking into, well, should I say that? Me and the Puerto Ricans were in the laundry room. And somebody, I don't know who, started breaking into the laundry washers and dryers. Just breaking into them, taking the quarters out and everything. Actually, Richie was there too. Our only white holdover was there too. And he had his dog with him, Princess. Princess was from Vietnam, a police dog. Princess was tight, smart. I seen Princess crawl all the way to university and back on command. Crawl all the way to university and back. Man, that's how bad Princess was. In any event, all these kids are in there. Somebody starts robbing these machines, getting these quarters out. And so the last top to the watch machine, they're trying, but they can't break it open. God almighty, it's the last one. And so they said, well, let's just take it off and get out of here and take it into the back somewhere, and we'll deal with it there, because we've been in here a long time. So that was the deal. So they took it off, and everybody's going out in front of 1520, trying to make our way to the back up there in the woods. And somebody drops the top. And when they drop the top, this damn thing springs open and quarters go flying everywhere. So just at that time, Kool Herc was coming back from a party. He had nothing to do with any of this. He was coming back from a party, and all these kids start hitting their knees, picking up these quarters, you know. And the police rolled in on us. And he gets arrested with me and everybody else when he wasn't even doing anything. That was just, he was like, what the hell? So they took us down to the 44th precinct, and they sat us in this meeting room, and they left us in there so long that we had time to get rid of all of the quarters, buying stuff out of the machines. Like I had like 10 candy bars and 3 pops and all of this kind of stuff. And they're like, well, where's all the money at? And we're just like, you know. So they had to let us go because they didn't have any proof that we stole quarters, because we didn't have any quarters on us.
Now, was the 44th precinct down by that motel?
Yes.
Along the river. It's down. Yeah.
Stadium Motor Lodge.
Right. So that's that precinct.
Yeah. Yeah. So they took us down there, and they couldn't do anything with us because we didn't have any proof that we stole quarters. Nobody had quarters. We had plenty of candy, but we didn't have any quarters. So,
that's a great story.
why did I get arrested when I'm just walking down the street, you know? So, yeah, but they emptied out that whole laundry room, all of those machines, I swear. But people were pissed, right? Because now they couldn't do laundry.
Yeah.
A whole building full of people couldn't do laundry for a week. They were hot. Hotter than when the elevators broke. That was tough. Dragging groceries up 17 flights of stairs.
Did that happen very often?
Not very often. I would say maybe 3 times. Speaking of elevators, okay. Me and my white friend, who will remain nameless, we found a way that if you open the elevator door, you can stick a stick down in there and open the door to the floor below and just open that door. So we were playing around with that. And then we had one door open on the next floor down. And he's like, go run down there and hold it open so I could let the stick go. I don't know what we're going to do, but I ran down there to hold the door open. And when I ran down there, there was a 2-year-old boy standing in front of the hole. Yes. And I was like, oh my God. And he was just standing. I'm glad he stopped. He was just standing there in front of the hole, 13 stories open. And that little boy, I actually see him on Facebook now. He's a grown man. And I'm just like, boy, you just don't even know, man.
Wow.
Because of our stupidness, you could have been in a lot of trouble, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was this
fun, right at the time?
Was this your friend who hooked up the speakers for Kool Herc? I remember you telling me that story.
I was the same kid. He hot wired the electricity to the parking lot what do you call it, floodlights. And so I don't know how, but he was able to hook it up. So they had a bank of things to plug into, and that's how the party got started. He was the same kid who created a party line between him and me with 2 phones and a car battery. 2 phones and a car battery, and even had a light so that if you didn't want to ring and it was late at night, the light would just flash and you can just pick up without disturbing your mom in the middle of the night if you wanted to talk. He's a very smart guy, the same guy who put a major commercial CB antenna on top of the roof of our building. They made him take it down, but we talked to people as far away as Connecticut and Mississippi on that thing.
Wow.
Major CB unit up there. Really smart guy. He put the lighting in our clubhouse. There was a clubhouse behind 1600 that we built out of leftover concrete form wood. I'm talking about a 2-bedroom structure in back of the parking lot, the parking garage in 1600. It had lights, it had electricity for a fan in the summertime. It was awesome. I think somebody brought in a lava light. And it was like a 2-bedroom clubhouse that we had down there. But then after they found it and knocked it down, we were resigned to go in the crawl space of this huge apartment building on Undercliff. That's right behind 1520. There's a huge apartment back there on Undercliff. And the crawl space was about 3.5, 4 feet deep under this building. So we started hanging like rats, I guess. Started hanging out under there with candles and just kind of hanging out. But yeah, there was a couple of really integral stories of community building, for lack of a better word.
And just kind of a general do-it-yourself. You know, if you didn't have what you needed provided for you, then you would rig something up and you'd work it out.
Nobody had much of anything, right? They're all working parents, and a lot of the parents were receiving welfare, so there wasn't a lot of money moving around. In fact, I read something about 10 years ago that 10453, that area code, was the poorest area code in New York. And I was like, damn, I thought it was poor then. It's poor now.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it wasn't a lot of finance to move around in that area. Not at all.
I mean, and I think that makes the emergence of hip hop all the more of such a compelling story. You know, it's a bunch of people getting together, forming community around dance and joy and resilience, and without much to get by, but forming this remarkable thing that takes off around the globe. I mean,
that's the greatest thing about the whole thing, and that's the important part to me too, is to see that happen with all of these guys, all of these DJs and dancers, and what's your boy, Shabba Dude passed away recently. Great dancer.
Yeah.
Quinones, I believe is his last name, Quinones. And that was interesting because I remember him in Break In and all of that, Turbo and Ozone and that whole thing. And that's part of our history as a culture of Americans, right? And that's a good thing, right? Because a lot of these folks have contributed to that story. And that's a great thing, actually. Like I said, at some point, I'm going to connect with the right people and tell the story of that culture a little bit broader, because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Absolutely. And one thing that you mentioned to me when we spoke last, you were talking about how there's, there was a whole culture of hip hop, I guess, before you necessarily would have called it that, even before Kool Herc and all of that. And I guess what you meant by that is the community that was forming. And do you want to say more about that? Because I thought that was a very interesting point that you were making.
Yeah, see, the story I like to tell ends with Kool Herc's party. That's where it ends, because that's a whole different thing. But prior to that, they have what you call B-boys and B-girls.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that somehow turned into breakers, but it was always Bronx boys and Bronx girls, B-boys and B-girls. And the whole idea was to show yourself in the best light possible. Nobody's got squat, but like my mother said, you can have one pair of pants and one t-shirt and one pair of shoes, but you can also wash and iron that shit every day and go outside and be your best person. So you may not have a lot, but it's how you present yourself and how you care for yourself. And care became a big part of that. Like I said, there was a time when I was getting a haircut every 2 days, just to keep the line straight and, you know, massage the waves and, you know, buying clothes and trying to, you know, be our best self that way. And it kind of, you know, it's like advertising too, right? So if you're in the drug game, it's great advertising. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a girlfriend, couldn't do better. That really worked out too, you know, being your best self. So, but there was also drawbacks too, right? Because as I'm doing this thing of trying to be this great person, inherently there's also something wrong, right? Because I knew that educationally I had been a failure, hadn't even tried to get through high school, you know? So I guess for me, a lot of...
Did you ever try to take you under their wing in school experience?
Hell no. Actually, my guidance counselor in 82, junior high school 82, said, Fred, I think that you're such a clown and you don't really care about school that you might consider working with your hands when you get older. And I cussed his ass out. I was like, dude, are you serious? Who the hell are you? You're like a second grade counselor. You're going to try to tell me how to live my life? I was very upset with him about that. How the hell can you say that? And second, because you don't take this seriously. I don't blame him now, because based on what he knew, that probably was a good suggestion, right? But at the time, I was upset. I was like, "How are you?"
Were you ever like attracted by school sports, wanting to be in a team or something like that?
The only time I thought I was going to be attracted by that, I signed up for the tumbling team at junior high school 82. And they ended up making me the tumbling clown. So I was the guy who came out last, who tripped over himself and rolled down the aisle, and people laughed. And, you know, I guess at the time it was cool because I had people's attention and they were laughing and it made sense. But in terms of my contribution to an athletic event, I didn't feel that. I felt like, oh, this was fun, and they kind of laughed. But I don't want to be known as nobody's clown neither. So I got away from that pretty quick. So I didn't sign up for any sports. I always tell people, you know, my high school didn't have sports. I remember them trying to get together some pennies for a basketball tournament. I'm like, that's kind of cute, trying to get together some pennies for basketball. But then I've been told by others who actually went to school that they did have sports at TAP. But I just wasn't aware of it, right? My whole frame of reference was, they don't have anything there, you know? I spent my year and a half at TAP standing outside selling weed. And the structure was weird at TAP, right? Because they had 3 different time classes for classes. You had the 7:15 to 11:15. Then you had the 12 to 3:30, and then you had a 4 to 7, I believe. There were like 3 different stages, and I was in that first stage, the 7:15 to 11:45, I think it was. And so even when I tried to go to school, I was only there a couple hours, you know, so it wasn't really serious to me. And based on how they were moving us through the system. It was more like a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
I was.
And was this true of a lot of your friends that, you know, they got very little individual intention or reinforcement?
I don't think so, because my friends, some of them I'm still in contact with, they did well. They graduated from Gompers, they graduated from Taft, they had great experiences.
Uh-huh.
They did all of these things, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's great. I look at our yearbook on classmates.com, and there's a picture of me in there. I'm like, why do they even have me in there? Who took this picture? Because I wasn't there that much. There was one picture of me in there, so I was like, okay, whatever. But no, I never took it serious. Actually, the part I did take seriously was in junior high school '82. We used to have these what they call knuck contests. You know, knucks. It's a card game where if you lose, you get to take the deck and hit people on the knuckles with it. The number of times that they.
Oh yeah, I remember that from the junior high school cafeteria.
Yeah, we used to have people.
Did you also play the game where you're slapping hands?
Oh yeah.
Your hands.
Yeah, yeah. The slap hands one, but nuts was a little bit more brutal because we had people crying and bleeding and everything else after those games, and so that was always fun to go play. Actually, in the 7th grade in junior high school '82, we won football and basketball. My class, we had some athletes in our class. Jerome James, Bernard, Donald Witherspoon. There's a gang of Ivanhoe, Burbeck. There was a bunch of athletes, and we won basketball and football in the 7th grade. So that was my first year in that neighborhood, in that school. So that was kind of cool to be a part of that. But after that,
Luther Vandross was a product of the Taft music program.
I didn't know that.
He and his friend Carlos Alomar, who is a world-class guitarist and arranger, he and his friends from Taft actually produced David Bowie's first American tour.
Nice.
And if you take a picture of David Bowie singing Young Americans, it's Luther in the chorus singing along. He actually helped write that song. But he shut down the Taft music program in the middle of the 70s along with the fiscal crisis. So
yeah, I remember Stevie Wonder came there one time to play music at Taft, one of our, events. And I remember seeing David Bowie too during the Ziggy Stardust years.
Right.
That was pretty cool too. Yeah. So yeah, the Bronx was an incredible place. I think about the Academy of Music, Brooklyn Opera House, where the Knicks played, Madison Square Garden. All kinds of places to experience music, and it wasn't the rap music, right? It was all these other types, a lot more rock than anything during that time. The Who, Yes, all of these bands used to come through there, like nobody's business through New York during that time. Yeah, it was a great experience to have lived. I tell you what.
Wow, this is really very valuable. And just to give you an idea, we have all the Bronx African American History Project interviews posted on a digital website in Fordham libraries where people around the world consult them.
Nice.
So this was
Steven sent me, right?
Yeah, I sent that to you. So there's some great interviews. You're gonna be a spectacular addition. And yeah, once everything's transcribed, I'll send you a transcript of the interview so you can see it, and you'll also, have the recording to share with your children and any other family members you want. So
yeah, I thought it was important to at least give that perspective of what it was like to be a part of helping to develop that culture, because there was a lot of what these young people did and responded to and acted that allowed for that community to be the community that it was.
Absolutely.
I think this is really, I'm so glad that Stephen invited me to join you in this.
Thank you for asking me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. And one kind of final question, which you'll be able to, tie everything up together with, I think, is what does your time growing up in the Bronx represent for you? And what would you want people to take away from it, future generations?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. It represents for me that anything is possible. Anything is possible. In terms of how we grew up and where we grew up and when we grew up, I'm not supposed to be here. There's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't be here. Some based on my personal performance, most based on luck, why I'm still here now. And so the cards were kind of stacked against us. But with community, with family, and with hope, anything's possible. And there was always hope. My mother always instilled in us hope. My grandparents always showed us a hopeful existence. My neighbors always showed love and appreciation and the hope that you know better, that you can do better, and hope that I don't catch you doing wrong.
Uh-huh.
Hope was always a big part of it, and that anything is possible. So don't let your environment dictate what and who you become, because that's strictly up to you. So if you want to be lazy and not do the work, then you are what you are. But if you want more, like I tell my son, keep working hard, do the right thing, treat people well, and you'll be blessed. You will be blessed. And I feel like I've been blessed. This opportunity right here is a blessing to just get the story out and let people know. Meeting you folks is a great thing. Everything happens for a reason. So don't be discouraged, because I always tell people life is cyclic. There's going to be these highs and there's going to be lows. So you just don't be too high when you're high and don't be too low when you're low.
Right.
Just try to stay in the middle zone and understand that fluctuation is going to happen, and just stay centered, if you will, in that wave. And things will end up okay. And I've have an incredible life. We've done well, me and my wife. My kids are happy. We live in a great community. I have a wonderful job. Things are just going great. And none of that should have happened based on my background. None of that should have happened. But I'm thankful that it did, and thankful for you folks.
Well, thank you. It's a real privilege to hear this story, and to have the opportunity to share it with a whole lot of people.
And I'm available if you wanted to ask me any other questions or talk to any young people or whatever you might need from me. I'm available. We're colleagues, work at Western Washington University.
Actually, I teach a class at Fordham called From Rock and Roll to Hip Hop. And I have to teach it mostly online because of the pandemic. But, when we get to the origins of hip hop, if you want to drop in, say hello to them, they'd love it.
Please invite me. I will definitely.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. I have your email address. And as Stephen knows, once you're on my email list, you'll regret it, because I'm going to. You now are on my Bronx list of people all over the world who have a connection to the Bronx.
Nice. One last story from me. I think about Fordham University. Actually, my aunt went there. I think my mom took a couple classes there. But Fordham University, they still got that black gate going down.
The gate, the famous gate.
The famous gate. Okay, so one night, me and my buddy are coming back from a party in Harlem, and we stopped at the Howard Johnson's over there on Southern Boulevard, right across from the Bronx Zoo. It's long been gone.
Yeah.
But, so he goes to the bathroom, never comes back. And then I see him outside, like, come on, let's go, just run. and I got a cast on my foot, and I'm like, oh my God. And we've been partying all night, so I'm like, okay. So I'd run, and we start running. Like, I guess it's like eat and dash now, I guess. Whatever. So he was like the fastest person in the world. So he gets away scot-free. I thought I got away from walking down this gate right by the fire plug, about halfway down is a fire plug. And I get to the fire plug, and this car comes running up on the sidewalk and pins me against the gate. And it's the cook with a butcher knife. You ran out on me. I'm gonna knife you to death. But no, it's not me. It's this guy. He told me to run. He's like, you better give me every dollar you got in your pocket because they're taking it out of my salary. Don't make me hurt you. So I gave him $5 or $6 I had in my pocket. And so when you think about Fordham University, most people think of a fine, wonderful institution. I think about my life being taken from me over a stack of damn pancakes.
Wow. Well, that's the Bronx.
Oh boy.
Story.
Okay, Dr. Collins, you can be sure I'm going to be in touch. When I send out the poster for our Black History Month event, you'll be on the list to get it. And I will love to have you drop in on our class in about a month when we get to hip hop. Right now, I'm going in from the doo-wop area where I grew up. You know,
nice.
all those songs in the late 50s.
I'd love to try to add something to that for your students.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.
Thank you, Stephen.
Of course, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
And I'll be in touch as well. I'm going to get some names of people you're still in touch with from 1520 Sedgwick from you, and we'll try and get as many people as possible to share their stories as well, build up the whole record of the community, you know?
That sounds good.
Okay. Take care of yourself.
Good day.
Take care.
Bye.